All right, let's just jump right in. We are about to tackle one of the longest and most fascinating stories in all of human history, the story of India. And we're talking about a massive timeline here, 3,500 years of empires, world-changing ideas, and just incredible transformations.
So the big question is, how on earth do you do that? How do you possibly condense millennia of history into just a few minutes? It sounds kind of impossible, right? You could so easily get lost in all the dynasties and the dates, but nope, that's not what we're going to do.
Instead, we're going to focus on the game changers. We're going to zoom in on those pivotal moments, those truly revolutionary ideas, and the people who completely shifted the course of Indian and, you know what, in many cases, world history. So let's get started. Our story kicks off way, way back, around 1500 BCE. This is a period that really laid the groundwork for everything that came after. And what's wild is that this is where we find some ideas that feel surprisingly modern. Okay, check this out. Long before we were all taught about Athens being the cradle of democracy, early Indian tribes had their own democratic systems. I mean, they weren't ruled by some all-powerful king. Instead, they had these assemblies, the Sabha and the Samiti. In these councils, leaders were actually elected, and the big decisions, like going to war or how to share resources, were made through debate and actual voting. The whole system was built on people making choices together, not just some guy at the top calling all the shots. And this just puts it in perspective, doesn't it? The very idea of governing by discussion was happening thousands of years ago in India. It completely flips the script on our usual timeline of where democracy comes from. It's an absolutely incredible piece of history. All right, let's jump forward now to our next big turning point. We're heading into India's first great empire, the Mauryan Empire, and to one of the most remarkable stories of personal transformation you'll ever hear. So let me introduce you to Emperor Ashoka. He starts his reign as this absolutely brutal warlord, just conquering lands through incredibly bloody wars. But then, one single event changed him and history forever. 100,000. That's how many people were killed in just one conflict, the Kalinga War. And seeing that level of death and destruction firsthand, it just broke him. He had this profound epiphany, completely renounced violence, and converted to Buddhism. But here's the thing. It's not just that he had a change of heart. It's what he did next that was so revolutionary. He totally reinvented what it meant to be an emperor. Instead of ruling with a sword, he decided to rule by a moral code. He had his principles, his edicts of Dhamma, carved on giant stone pillars and rocks all over the empire for everyone to see. And these weren't just laws, they were like a public promise from the king himself, promoting peace, social welfare, and respect for all life. And get this, by writing them in languages like Greek, he wasn't just talking to his own people, he was broadcasting this new philosophy to the entire known world. Now, after the Mauryans, India entered a period that was so intellectually explosive, it's known as the Golden Age. This is when, under the Gupta Empire, Indian thinkers gave the world gifts we literally still use every single day. I mean, think about how fundamental these things are. The concept of zero and the decimal system, that's the bedrock of all modern computing. The phone or computer you're watching this on right now simply wouldn't exist without it. They were mapping the solar system and performing advanced surgery 1,000 years before Europe was. It was just an astonishing explosion of genius. And all that brainpower? It translated directly into economic power. At their peak, first the Gupta and later the Mughal empires accounted for a quarter, 1/4, of the entire world's economic output. So India wasn't just a center of learning, it was the economic engine of the planet. Okay, let's just pause for a second and get our bearings. This timeline really puts it all into perspective. You can see that long foundational Vedic age, then the rise of the Mauryan Empire with leaders like Ashoka, and then that incredible burst of creativity during the Gupta Golden Age. It really gives you a sense of the scale of history we're flying through before we hit our next major turning point. So, the next massive shift came with the arrival of Islamic rule. This led to the rise of one of history's most powerful and, let's be honest, splendid empires, the Mughals. And this era would completely redefine Indian art, architecture, and culture. You had Babur, the warrior who started it all. Then Akbar the Great, a visionary who championed religious tolerance. After him came Shah Jahan, the master builder. And finally, Aurangzeb, the expansionist who took the empire to its largest size. Each one left a huge, indelible mark on India.
And of course, you can't talk about the Mughals without talking about the Taj Mahal. But it's so much more than just a beautiful building. It's a story. You have a heartbroken emperor, 22 years of nonstop work, over 20,000 artisans, all of that to create this perfect monument to love. It's the ultimate symbol of a new, blended Indo-Islamic culture.
This chart is just great for pulling it all together. Look at how it lays out each era. You can just trace the line of key achievements: the tribal republics of the Vedic period, the centralized government and rock edicts of the Mauryans, the scientific explosion of the Guptas, and then the breathtaking art and architecture of the Mughals. It's such a powerful visual summary of thousands of years of innovation, leading us right to the doorstep of the modern world.
But after the Mughals began to decline, a new power showed up, this time from the sea. And that brings us to our final act, the 2 centuries of British rule and the epic, world-changing struggle for freedom that came next.
Now, the British Raj was, at its core, about exploitation. The railways, for instance, were built for one main reason: to pull resources out of India and ship them back to Britain as efficiently as possible. But here's one of history's great ironies. That very same network ended up connecting people from all these different regions, helping to create a shared sense of identity that would eventually fuel the fight for independence. And the leader of that fight was, of course, Mahatma Gandhi. He basically invented a whole new kind of revolution: nonviolent resistance. From boycotting all British goods, to that incredible 240-mile salt march that just captured the world's imagination, to the final defiant call for the British to quit India, his campaigns took apart the empire's authority piece by piece. And then, on this day, after centuries of struggle, the moment finally came. India achieved its freedom. It marked the start of a brand new chapter and really the beginning of the end for the British Empire as the world knew it.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, you see this incredible arc of history, a journey that started with those early democratic councils, the Sabha and Simiti, and 3,500 years later comes full circle with the birth of the world's largest democracy.
It's a story of just astonishing resilience and constant reinvention, which, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question. After all this time, after so many turning points that changed absolutely everything, what comes next? What will India's next chapter be? The story is still being written,